Joining us now is Lord Hogan-Howe, a former Metropolitan Police Commissioner in charge of the operations like this that we're seeing unfold today, but in that case, the Queen's Diamond Jubilee and those London Olympics. Lord Hogan-Howe, thank you for your time.
Good morning.
We were talking with a military historian before. He made a point: you can practice and practice, as all good military men do, but it's the execution on the day that matters, and this is the day.
Yeah, I mean, the plan for the death of the Queen has been there for many years, called Operation Bridges. Every commissioner comes along and every commissioner reads it and gets stuck into what all the detail is, makes their own amendments. Of course, this commissioner's only been there for a couple of days this time.
Wow.
He was appointed just days ago. However, he was previously the head of counter-terrorism, previously a chief constable in a place called Surrey. So a very experienced guy. So it's one of the first things that he's got as his responsibility to make sure today goes well. I'm sure it will. But you can imagine the tension for everybody involved to make sure it does go well.
Talk about the ramp up. The Prime Minister's only been there for a couple of days. The King's obviously only in his first week, and the Commissioner as well. The experience of putting together security for Jubilee means big crowds around here. London Olympics means, of course, multiplicity of venues. What is peculiar to this event that you knew you'd be able to police, but the part of you that made you nervous about the little X factor of this event?
The big challenges here are always, first of all, you've got to search a large number of venues. So a large group of people who get ignored quite often in recognition are the searchers. So somebody has to search all the buildings, lampposts, drains, and that takes days. Dirty, horrible, hot, unrecognised. They'll have done all that by now. So that part's out the way. So that's a very big part of the work. Secondly, you've got, as you've already talked about, you've got many of the world's leaders in one place, which is predictable, at the same time, which is predictable. So in terms of thinking about terrorist attacks, they're the sort of thing you have to worry about, not only within the UK, but obviously different countries and different tensions around the world you've got to think about. And clearly, finally, you've got a huge route. You've got the route, obviously the fairly short route from Westminster Abbey, which you will see there's a Queen, he's moved over to Westminster Abbey, and then the journey from Westminster Abbey here past Buckingham Palace and then on to Windsor Castle, which for people in Australia may not know is probably about 20 miles away. So that's a long route, which will be in a vehicle. At any point in that, something could happen. It could be protests or something goes wrong. Everybody wants to make sure it goes right.
Yeah, Bernard, if I can get you to pause for just a second, because I want to get to our reporter, Peter Stefanovic, who is in and around Westminster Abbey. We've got to make the most of the technology when we have it. We'll resume our conversation with you in a second. Pete, what can you see?
Well, just on that, Paul, I mean, the police presence around Westminster Abbey, as you would expect, is just extraordinary. Just over my shoulder, you won't be able to see, but just over my shoulder down on street level, you've got police officers that are spaced anywhere between 5 and 10 metres apart. That's just on the streets. Then inside the compound of Westminster Abbey, just outside the Abbey itself, you've got dozens and dozens of police officers in there as well, keeping watch. So it all forms part of one of the biggest police operations that this city has ever seen. Since I've last spoken to you, people are trickling through Westminster Abbey as we speak. First of 2,000 guests. They're going through the side entrance. They're going through the front entrance. Haven't seen any world leaders just yet, though. I saw a bus pull up a short time ago, but didn't see any world leaders that I recognised anyway. So we're still about 2.5 hours away from the start of the state funeral, so I would suspect that they'll come a little bit later on. So that's what's happening here, but on the streets it's just extraordinary as well at the moment, Paul, as you'll be able to see. People are stacked 5 and 10 deep along that funeral procession route from Westminster Abbey down past Whitehall and the Mall itself. As we know, people have been camping out overnight, sometimes 2 nights in a row, just to secure that prized position. A few days ago, and this is something that's stuck with me, someone said to me that they wanted to see the Queen until they can't anymore. That helps explain the closeness that people feel here towards the former sovereign. It's why so many people lined up for more than 24 hours to see her lying in state. That's why so many people are looking to say a final goodbye on that funeral procession route today. 70 years ago, about 400,000 people gathered to see King George VI lie in state. I think it's safe to assume that that number will be broken by those who have come to see King George VI's daughter, Queen Elizabeth II. And as they all know, they're all part of this huge historic event today, but time now is running out. And I feel as though people will be looking on today with seriously heavy hearts.
Thank you, Peter Stefanovic there, live from the Abbey. The point he was making there is the crowds have already started to arrive. It's 2 hours now until the service. Questions, when are we going to see the world leaders? You would suspect, as would I, that they'll come in quite late in proceedings, arrive late and go in. Aside from the terror risk, one of the things we've watched in Britain are these extraordinary Extinction Rebellion protests. Individuals, you probably can't pick them out in the crowd, who are doing something to capture the world's camera attention. And it's not just protecting the lives of people attending today, it's also preserving the dignity of the occasion. That's not easy.
You're quite right. I mean, there's two big general things that police have got to do, which is keep the crowd safe. Anything could happen in any crowd. You can get crushing, people fall ill. You've still got a risk that you've got thieves about, pickpockets. So you've got to do all that, and then you've got to expect, or at least to accept it's possible that people choose this opportunity to protest. So the world's press are here. They're recording live or they're broadcasting live. So it is a great opportunity. I think we all hope that won't happen. But the cops have got to be prepared to intervene if that happens. And of course, they may have been stood for a few hours, may get, as we all do, get a bit fixed. So you want them to be alive and make sure that if something happens, they don't freeze, they get stuck in there. And you've still got to work within the law. It's not illegal to protest. What it is illegal to do is to break the law and threaten people or cause what we call it a breach of the peace. But you want to make sure that this event passes off as safely, peacefully and respectfully as possible.
Obviously you're not going to show your hand on TV, even on the other side of the world, but we can see things like snipers, and we've seen those before, but give us an idea about the operation that people can't see and won't see today. They'll see the uniformed officers, but give us an idea about some of the scope that we don't see.
Well, first of all, you've got to work with all your partners. So, that means a big control room. So, not too far from here, there's a huge control room, probably about 200 people in there. You were trying to coordinate all that work together. The local authorities have got to work together, the electricity people, the transport for London, the parts of the jigsaw that aren't always seen. But the ambulance service, the fire brigade have to get in here. You've got to make sure that can work. Clearly, there's a link with the military, and you've got to make sure the ceremonial works well. So all that's got to be linked. I think secondly, obviously, you're going to have most of the officers you can see in uniform, and there are some that aren't. And the idea is that obviously we can see from here, that you can see the back of the crowd, and of course the officers can see the front of the crowd. You want to know what's going on at the back. But these officers will all be asked to make sure they are building a relationship with the crowd, and they do that for two reasons. It's a good thing for British cops to do, have a good relationship, but as importantly, if the crowd notice something unusual, they want them to tell them. Because if the cops can't see it, they need someone to say, that guy's acting suspiciously. Everybody say, what does suspiciously mean? People know odd things when they see it. People don't engage. They seem to be behaving oddly. Obviously, if they've got a weapon, people would notice that. But you need that crowd of thousands of people to be your eyes and ears. And you need to be engaging with them all the time. So I would expect these cops to be building a relationship. So all that take together starts to build some confidence that this is going to work. And it will work. But you never know.
You should be very proud of the police that we've come into contact with. I mean, we're not just wearing media passes when they've been genial. I've watched their interaction with kids. I've seen bobbies take off their hats for photographs. There's a lovely atmosphere. We know they're walking around with machine guns and big weaponry to keep us safe, but there's a lovely sense of community.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think one of the things we're proud of in this country is that we're one of the few countries in the world where you don't generally carry firearms. There are probably 95% of the cops on duty throughout the UK all the time, particularly even here today, do not carry a gun. And if you carry a gun, we understand why different parts of the world do that. But it puts a little bit of distance between you, because the officer's having to physically stay away to make sure no one gets hold of this gun. So the fact that you're able to do that, and we call it policing by consent, but even with 20,000 cops here today, you cannot impose your will on a crowd. You're going to do it by persuasion. If something goes wrong, all right, you might have to deal with someone, but you don't want the crowd turn against you. You want to make sure they're on your side. And generally that's what happens. But you're keeping that balance right. You know, and I mean, as you've already indicated, you know, to get to this site, I walked probably, I don't know, about 4 miles.
Yeah.
A journey that should have been probably 200 yards. That's fine. But you could see people get a bit fractious, get a bit tired. Yeah, you never know, they might be physically a bit less able. So what you need to do is just keep talking to people, ask them to just be a bit generous spirited, and yeah, just keep engaging. And if they've got a problem, let's see if you can resolve it. And usually people can. And hopefully today what we're going to have is a crowd that will not have alcohol.
Yes, yes.
Please God that that's not the case. But, you know, and alcohol can be, as you know, can be something that can be a challenge for everybody to deal with. But I hope it's a morning event. People are advised not to drink, and all the pubs are closed. Most of the pubs are closed. So you've got a crowd who want to be able to pay their respects, and they don't generally want to cause trouble. They just want to enjoy is the wrong word. They want to be part of a great and historic event.
But also, as we've seen with the other crowds, people want to step up. This is their opportunity to do so. So, you know, getting on the cans is not going to be it. Bernard, lovely to see you. Lovely to talk to you. I could hear to listen to his voice all day. We start calling you a Lord, but that's what you wanted to be known by your first name. Thank you very much.